women through technology. I'm Gary Fowley. I'm the ITU representative to the United Nations. ITU stands for the International Telecommunication Union. We're the UN specialized agencies for information and communication technologies. And we're here today from UN headquarters in New York. I will be introducing you to our panel, moderating our panel, and feeding your questions to our panelists for them to discuss. We have a very exciting panel of guests today. First, we have Ms. Geena Davis, Academy Award-winning actress, and a special ITU envoy for women and girls in the field of technology for ITU. Geena, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Next, we also have Ahmed Al-Andawi, the United Nations Secretary General's Envoy on Youth. Welcome, Ahmed.
Thank you, Gary. Great to be with you.
Great to have you. Next is Doreen Bogdan, Chief of Strategic Planning and Membership at ITU. Hi, Doreen.
Hi, Gary.
Good to have you here, too. Next, Ms. Stacy Martinet, the Chief Marketing Officer of Mashable.com. Greetings, Stacy.
Hi, Gary.
Here you are.
Hi, thank you to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you for being with us. And finally, Blair Christie, Ms. Blair Christie, Chief Marketing Officer at Cisco. Thank you for joining us, Blair.
Hi, Gary, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you. Okay, before we begin, remember that you can tweet, all you folks out there, you can tweet your questions to us using the hashtag Innovate Your Future. Okay, so let's begin. Geena, I want to kick off the discussion with you through your pioneering work at the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media, and in your role as ITU Special Envoy. You become a real respected global voice on the importance of gender equality in media and the empowering potential of technology for women and girls. Could you give us a brief description about what sort of drew you to this issue and which gaps in this arena you hope to fill through your work at the Institute and with the ITU?
Thank you, Gary. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hi. About 8 years ago, my daughter was 2 years old, and I started watching children's programs and G-rated movies and things with her then, and I was stunned to notice that there seemed to be far fewer female characters than male characters in what she was watching, and also that there was a great deal of stereotyping of the female characters. I didn't intend to make it my life's work, as it has now become, but I found that when I mentioned it within my industry, everyone said, well, no, that's all been fixed. That's not a problem anymore. So I decided, and I'm sure everybody in technology can relate to this, that I needed the data in order to make my case. So my institute has now sponsored the largest amount of research ever done into gender depictions in media. We're actually now in the middle of our first global gender in media study. It'll be the first in the world ever done. And what we found was disturbing because what kids are seeing is very much bereft of female presence. For example, in family films, the ratio of male to female characters is 3 to 1. So for every one female character, speaking character, there are 3 male characters. And this is the most disturbing aspect. In crowd scenes or group scenes in these movies, only 17% of the characters are female. So, in other words, the fictitious worlds that are being created for children to see and for the world to consume, 80% of the world's entertainment media is created in the United States. So we are exporting an image of women that is not positive. So we also found that they had very few occupations. 81% of the jobs were held by male characters, and in the STEM fields, the ratio was, I believe, it's 6 to 1. And if you look specifically at computer engineering, the ratio was 15 to 1. So, and there were no lead or co-lead characters that were female that were in any sort of technology field. So what we're doing, in essence, is training kids to think that 17% of the population is all that women make up. In other words, as I was saying, these fictitious worlds create only, contain only 17% women instead of, as we know, half as they do in real life. So a big goal for us is to change this. What we do is, since I'm in the entertainment industry, I take the research directly to the studios and networks and guilds and present it to them. The good news is that they have been very impacted by learning these numbers and really have committed to making change. I feel that when we update our research in 2015, we will actually see the needle having moved, because if we added female characters at the rate we had been, it would have taken 700 years to achieve parity. So with my interest in empowering girls and elevating the status of women and girls around the world, I was absolutely thrilled to be able to become Special Envoy for Women and Girls to ITU, and their tremendous efforts to get girls not only more involved in the production and entrepreneurial nature of this technology explosion, but to have their status elevated in the culture by seeing themselves presented in more interesting and varied and non-traditional ways. And so that's part of what we're doing.
Oh, it's fascinating, Geena, and just to see how the real world, I mean not unreal, but the media world is bleeding, sort of reflects what's happening in the real world in terms of a lack of representation. And
right.
Hopefully the research that you will present us with that shows an improvement in that media image will be reflected in the world of STEM careers, for example, because that's been really such a shame for us to not bring in that half of the population that really needs to be empowered by technology and needs to be reflected as such. So thank you very much for that. If anyone wants any more information about the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media, visit their website at www.cjane.org, and that's S-E-E, jane.org. Thanks, Geena. I'd now like to bring in the Special Envoy for Youth, Ahmed Alandawi. Greetings, Ahmed. Thank you very much for being here. Just to start, Ahmed, you've taken on this role. It's fairly new for you because you are the first UN Special Envoy on Youth, but you've got an extensive history working on youth-related issues in your native Jordan and across the Middle East and North Africa. In your discussions so far with young people from around the world, what are some of the challenges and opportunities most frequently cited by young girls and women, and how ICTs, information and communication technologies, could address the issues that they're having? We'd love to hear from you. But we've lost your audio. I think you're muted.
As you said, technology is a fantastic thing when it works, so I hope it works now.
And it's working again now, so that's good.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Guy. I would like to greet all the panelists and to greet everyone here from the UN headquarters in New York. And if you allow me just to trace the title of our Google Hangout today, and there are three key words: empowerment, women, young women, and also technology. And if I would like to go in a reverse order and start with technology, who can, today argue against the importance of technology and the transformative power that technologies and information technology they have to transform, especially when they are given to population and people who are eager to change and eager to transform their communities and societies. We have witnessed this story across the world, and we have seen, from political change to economic prosperity, technologies were a tool. From where I come from in Jordan, only 1% of the population in Jordan work in ICT industry. They contribute 11% of our GDP. Just imagine this number, just to see the power of information technology. Speaking about young women and the challenges that young women face, you just mentioned that they are half of the population. There are two halves of the population, actually. The first, that half of the world's population, the 7 billion, are under 30 years old today. The half of our 7 billion who live in our world today are young people. This is the largest ever group of young people in the history of this planet. This is a transformative potential for the whole globe to achieve a better future for us and the generations to come. And when you combine technologies with young people and young women, I think we are able to speak about, making sure that they are empowered, but also they are contributing to the development of their societies. I was in Tahrir Square during the Egyptian Revolution, and maybe this is a story that I'm personally proud of. And I have seen the young Egyptian women as well when they went in the street. But it's not only about bringing political change; it's also about bringing change for the communities and for making sure that addressing the challenges. It's amazing how technology even serves better when the situation in the ground is very complex, because sometimes young people and young women, they are accessing technology and using them just to overcome all the challenges in their real world, because they can access to financial services sometimes, they can innovate using different platforms and connect to do social transformation in their societies. Young people today and young women are faced with tremendous challenges. While speaking about first, young women, they are not empowered enough, and this is the third word in the title of our Google Hangout about empowerment. First, to do empowerment, you need an enabling environment for that to happen. And by enabling environment, we talk about first legislation and laws that allowing young women to access technologies and to access first the infrastructure, the software and also the hardware that many young women, they don't even have access to that. The Secretary General of the United Nations just recently returned from a visit to Uganda, where he met with a group of young people. They established something called U-Report. And U-Report is a group of Ugandan youth who came together in collaboration with UNICEF and the World Bank to help them, evaluating and following up in the different programs of the United Nations to do kind of shadow governments and to do reporting and to hold governments and the United Nations accountable. It's the issue of access, if we're talking about the enabling environment. First, the issue of about providing legal framework that's supportive for young people and young women, that is supportive also for them to access services and access information technology. But it's also about making sure that this is reflected at the policy level in the allocation and the financial allocation for investing in this field, in the technology, and making sure that even the countries in the global south, where the majority of young people in our world today are coming from the global south, they can catch up and they can use the information technology that we are talking about. It's very interesting, two numbers here to share with you. First, 1.3 billion, they still don't have electricity. We're talking about 75% only connected today with social media, and to connected with internet. Bearing these two numbers in mind, we should not forget some more traditional tools of you reaching out to young people and get them on board, such as using the mobile services. And the majority of young people today, they already have access. And the number of SIM cards in the world are equal to the number of the population of this, the 7 billion almost. We're reaching that number. So I think my call here is to diversify our tools in reaching out to young people and young women and try to help them from where they are now to empower them, and not always to start by giving some kind of, would say, advanced solutions where the situation on the ground might be still lagging behind.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Listening to you, it reminds me of that old adage, if you educate a woman, a girl or a woman, you educate a family. But with the power of ICTs and media, you might be able to, if you educate a woman, you'll educate a community, you'll educate a country. So all the more reason to make sure that those in the world that are supposed to be holding up half the sky, have access to the tools that will allow them to show the other half of us how they can do it better. Thank you very much for that. Now we've heard a little bit about the challenge and gaps that we're sort of faced with. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Doreen Bogdan of the ITU. ITU is, as I mentioned, part of the UN system and works at the global level to connect communities worldwide to resources like mobile technology and broadband internet access. We also manage things like the spectrum that enables all of your devices to be connected, including what we're doing today. Doreen, can you explain to us what actions can be taken by the big actors out there, governments and large corporations, do you think, to implement and address the gender divide in ICTs? And what's the nature of the ITU's role in promoting girls in technology? If you could give us a little bit of an overview there, thank you.
Thanks very much, Gary, and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. So I think a lot can be done by governments and private sector to address the imbalance in terms of access to technology, but also the imbalance in terms of female participation in the ICT workforce. Thanks to people such as Geena and more recently Ahmed, there is more attention to this issue than we've ever seen before. On the workforce participation side, ITU is working with its members to raise awareness at all levels. We're working with governments, industry, educators, and of course, girls themselves. We have an annual Girls in ICT Day, which is held every year on the 4th Thursday of April. And that day aims to inspire girls and women to take up a tech career. Last year, Gary, we registered 1,300 events in 90 countries. And this year we broke our record with over 1,500 events in 120 countries. And that included a hearing at the European Parliament, which was hosted by the European Commissioner and Vice President, Ms. Nelly Cruz. In addition, ITU private sector members like Cisco, we're happy to be on this hangout with Cisco, Microsoft, Intel, Nokia, and lots of others are putting lots of efforts into this area with tech camps, awareness building activities, mentoring programs, and shadowing days. You know, many of the viewers might be surprised to learn that when mainframe computers were first invented, it was young women who did the programming. And when computer science courses first appeared on the university scene in the late 70s, the proportion of young men and women taking these courses was about 50-50. Today, it's closer to 80-20. And that's what we want to change. I personally am very optimistic. With so much momentum gathering, we're already on our way, I think, to turning that around. But of course, there's always more we can do, and it would be great to hear from those joining this hangout about other things we can do to change these perceptions.
And we're going to get there, Doreen. We're going to ask them, but what do you think, before we do, what do you think the governments can do? Because, you know, we do have the convening power of 193 countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Gary. I mean, I think Ahmed mentioned something very important about the role of governments in setting up enabling environments, so that's key. So on the access side, you know, the governments have a key role to play because access, it's linked to a country's overall development. So greater inclusion means growth in GDP. Intel estimates that global GDP could be increased by 18 billion. And that could happen by bringing 600 million additional women and girls online, which is remarkable. But it goes much broader than that. Greater inclusion also means better education, and greater inclusion also means better healthcare. You know, a growing number of countries are including gender as a key component in their national broadband plans. The most recent example is in Nigeria, who just last week approved their national broadband plan, where they're putting gender high in the plan, and including things like promoting access and offering incentives for training women to use the internet. Also in the area of empowering through ICT training, my own organization, the ITU, we have a long-standing partnership with an NGO called telecenter.org, and we are on track to train 1 million women in basic ICT skills. I just want to mention one inspiring example, and it's the case of a woman named Mirna Padilla, a Filipino woman who went from working abroad as a domestic helper to running her own graphic design business back home and employing dozens of staff. And as a result, her kids have choices and opportunities that she never had. Just before I finish, Gary, I just want to stress that gender divides actually go much deeper than just the problem in ICT access. ITU statistics show that there are currently 200 million fewer women online. But the reality is that even once a girl or a woman makes it online, there is evidence that the content that she might encounter contains inherent gender bias, going back to what Geena was saying in the beginning. Geena spoke about the vital importance of positive role models and how young girls find it difficult to identify with inspiring female characters in popular TV shows. Well, evidence actually suggests that online content is no better, and in some cases it might actually be worse. And this is really an important area that we need to pay attention to. We want girls to grow up happy. I want my girls to grow up happy. And we want them to be proud of themselves. We want them to celebrate their talents rather than feeling like second-class citizens. Today, we all know about the Margaret Thatchers and Sheryl Sandbergs of this world precisely because they are exceptions, as rare women at the top of their professions. I look forward to the day where we celebrate women because of their capabilities rather than because they are the exceptions to the rule. You know, ultimately, Gary, and I hope that Ahmed can help us with that, the world leaders are now engaged with the debate around the post-2015 development agenda. And we, collectively as a community, we need to make sure that the role of technology to empower women and girls is clearly recognized in the post-2015 agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doreen. That's very insightful and much appreciated. I think there is one area where young women and girls are maybe having a little bit of success, and that'll bring us now to our next guest. Stacey Martinet is the Chief Marketing Officer at Mashable.com, and she's a member of the Board of Directors for New York Women in Communications. Mashable is a social media news and technology blog. Stacey, in some ways, social media seems on the cover to be a great equalizer in terms of giving a voice to anyone who has access to it. And young women and girls have been using that, obviously, to get their voice out there. Where do you see it, social media, having the biggest impact on empowering women? And on the other side of that equation, where is the remaining work for us to do in pursuing gender equality in the world of information and communication technologies?
Thank you, Gary, and thanks for everyone for being here. Mashable is really thrilled to be part of this conversation. Mashable's community of readers is 25 million people, and 50% of that are women. So, there's clearly an appetite for this kind of information. 50% of our workforce here at Mashable is also women. And we really believe that that's just as important, that we can serve our community and that our workforce represents the community. And we really believe in empowerment for everyone. Our job is to translate the digital revolution and help people make sense of that, help make their lives better, their careers better, society better. And certainly social media has been a voice for everyone, and it can be the great equalizer. I think, as Geena talked about in the media, through social media, there's less of a filter, so people can share the successes they're seeing at a local level, a national level, and global level in areas around empowering young women. It's a way for people to connect who would never have been able to connect before, for inspiration and information. I was just reading about some young women in Uganda who have found ways to use both online and offline media to create a network. So they have a Facebook page that has people from around the world liking it and following their updates, and in some cases donating to their cause and sharing their cause. But one thing they found is when they need to talk about some very specific issues that they face, some horrifying issues that they're just not comfortable talking about, they have to have an offline network. So they meet up on a regular basis, and and they're finding ways to get more people into those meetups, so it is a safe place. So I think there's an opportunity to connect, but we also have a challenge in how do we create some of these safe networks, both on and offline, so that women feel comfortable talking about some of the basic needs that they need met to be part of this global society. Certainly education, that can be traditional education, but also there's greater opportunities online for online courses, for knowledge sharing in non-traditional ways have been a big tool to emerge in the last few years that I think we need to help people take more advantage of. We know that this is an economic issue, so we need to empower women as much as possible, and one thing that we really try to do at Mashable is show women how they can use social media for their small businesses. Because we know that if a woman grows a business, then a community grows and a nation grows. And so, helping them make sense of all the changes in social networks and how they could develop an online website and an e-commerce store. I think there's great opportunities to use the web in that way to drive economics. And also we have to keep in mind now, as Ahmed said, this is the youngest, biggest generation we've seen. These are our new consumers. So in the private sector, we have a real responsibility to understand and engage and empower these consumers and bring them into the conversation. I think that's good for the world. That's good for business. Those are some of the things we're covering at Mashable. So, there's a lot that's happening with social media, both on and offline, into furthering communities, having communities with deeper roots and now global reach. But there's still a gap. I think education's a gap. Certainly, access can be a gap. I think that's why it's key to the work that we're talking about here. Government's helping people get access, helping them understand how to use smartphones, getting phones into people's hands in developing places. And then there's still a wage gap. Even in the U.S. we see this, and there's a conversation happening, and we need to further that. But these are the areas where we have challenges that we're hoping we can be part of the solution.
Thank you very much, Stacey. I think that's really fascinating, and it brings to mind to me, in social media, if it is a great equalizer, that means that men and boys play a role too. And I don't want to go there quite yet, but maybe we could think about what boys could do to help empower girls and women and men can do to sort of make this more of an equal playing field. This is a bit of a personal issue for me. My father was one of 6 sons. I have no brothers, and I have 3 sons. So I'm hoping that my sons are empowering women out there to feel that they too have a role in this, and maybe we can come back to that in a bit. But before we do, I'd like to move to our next and final panelist, Blair Christie. Blair is the Chief Marketing Officer at Cisco. Welcome, Blair.
Hi, Gary.
Blair Cisco is, as we all know, is a global leader in the world of networking technology, and your company plays a leading role in looking for emerging opportunities to meet demand for Cisco solutions in new markets and among new consumer groups. This whole new group of consumers, the first original netizens, I guess. Perhaps you can tell us a little about your own experience as a woman who has scaled the heights, as it were, made it in the technology field, and what kind of initiatives private sector actors such as Cisco, Microsoft, Intel, Mashable as well can do to ensure that women aren't sidelined because of gender stereotyping and discrimination or family circumstances or their responsibilities as mothers, for example.
Sure. No, thank you, Gary, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's a privilege. This topic, not only am I very passionate about it, but it's a very important focus for Cisco and for all of our peers in the technology industry. For me, you asked about my own experience. Just like everybody else on this panel, I've worked very, very hard, and I've really enjoyed what I do. And when you have that combination, as I'm sure many of you can relate to, and you have great role models, both men and women, anything is possible. And technology is fascinating because the possibilities are limitless, as we know. And what's interesting, I think, about particularly ICT and the work that we do with ITU and others, is that the role of technology is only multiplying as we speak. It's tremendous. Ahmed talked about the impact on GDP. But if you consider that 50 billion things are going to be connected to the internet by the end of 2020, and that another 2.5 billion people are going to come online, there's a huge opportunity in technology today. And the challenge we have in technology is that even during times of recession, we cannot hire enough people. We need over 1.7 million people in IT just in the US in the coming years. We cannot hire fast enough. And with the younger generation, there's a clear opportunity not just to bring more individuals into information technology and really grow in this space, but bring women into it. I was really struck by your comments, Doreen, as I've heard some of the same statistics, that in the 1980s, over 37% of the computer science degrees went to women. And today it's less than 20. And I simply cannot understand how that could be happening, given the incredible role of technology now and in the future. So I believe private sector has a significant role and responsibility here. I do believe there's a lot that we can do as women to better ourselves and better our fellow women. And I think there's a lot that men and boys can do. And as a mother of 2 daughters and a son, I am interested in both sides. But I really believe the power is going to be in that private and public sector partnership. So in the private sector, the way we've been doing it and looking at it at Cisco, and I know many of my peers in the industry are doing it because we're best practicing and learning from each other, is we think about it like a business initiative. And it's really time to look at this like a business initiative. And in marketing, as Stacy can probably relate, you have a funnel. And you want people to be aware of what is going on so you can bring them into the funnel, and then you want to convert along the way. So let me give you an example of what I mean. If you want to broaden the funnel and put more people, more women specifically in the pipeline, you need to drive awareness. And at Cisco, we're really active in Girls in ICT Day. We had over 2,200 girls participate in over 70 locations just with Cisco folks alone. We're doing a lot with other STEM initiatives. We also have a very strong institution called the Networking Academies. There's over 10,000 networking academies in high schools and colleges around the world, 165 countries, where we've taken over 4 million students, and we've brought them in and we're teaching them how to build and manage and architect secure computer networks and get involved, because education, as we've all heard from the panel today, is absolutely key. My concern here is that only 19% of those students are women and 15% in the US, so it's even a bigger number outside of the United States. So we're putting significant focus there to bring more women in. I was just recently at a high school in Capitol Heights, Maryland, where 50% of the networking academy students were girls. And I was amazed at how this happened. There are really 2 critical factors: an amazing principal and an amazing teacher. So we can see where we need to focus. But again, it's awareness, so we can bring more of the women and more of the girls into science, technology, information technology. But the second piece of the business initiative that I think the private sector needs to think about is how do we convert or really grow women along the way, along the journey. I've had great role models, but we know today, just like in media and online content, we don't have a significant number of role models in leadership in the private sector. So companies need to pay much more attention to how they're bringing women along and not losing them. Because what we're seeing is we're losing women at a certain level, and they're not rising in the ranks. And I think we all know you can be what you can see, Geena. So
right.
That is something that's very, very important for us. And so we've been doing that through women's groups. We do a lot of sponsorships. And again, we take these initiatives and we put accountable metrics around them and try to follow them through the business, just like you would with the business initiative, and try to convert along the way. But there's much more that we can do. But the private sector clearly has a very important responsibility here, because this is how we're going to be driving the economies on a global basis for many decades to come.
Thank you very much, Blair. Absolutely right. Private sector is such an important player here. It's building the world for the most part of ICTs. Now, we've had a chance to hear from everyone, and we've had a lot of great input. Thank you all very much for your insight on this issue. I think it's now time to get a few questions in from our viewers out there in the cyber world. I want to start with one that I think kind of brings us back to earth in a sense. We've talked a lot about policy and higher level issues. This comes from Martin. He says, the challenges discussed can be daunting and the guests are all quite accomplished. He said, but what can the average person, whether you're a young woman or a man, do to help make progress in this area? This is a special question, he says, for people living in rural or hard to reach areas. I'm going to give that to ask Geena to start us off on that, because you mentioned that you got into this because of the personal impact it had on your daughter. That was a personal initiative. What do you think people could do out there to kind of get inspired by this?
Right. Well, I so appreciate all the comments from the panelists, which highlight the importance of this topic to all of our futures. I think one thing we can do is, as parents, encourage our girls to see themselves in this role. Obviously, we want to change also what girls see in the media, so that they see women and girls engaged in these activities. But it's also important for parents to point this out to their girls and encourage them. There's a moment in their lives where they're confidence in their abilities in technology and math and science drops off significantly. And so there's something cultural happening in the message. I think there's been a tremendous increase, and this might explain why things were better in the 70s and 80s and less women are entering the field. There's been a tremendous increase in the sexualization of women and girls, especially. We can measure it in the media, in ads, in marketing, where we're encouraging them earlier and earlier to think about their appearance rather than what they do or what they're capable of. So, so girls are hitting a point where they realize it's much more important to be sexy than smart. So we can all work on that. We can limit what our kids watch. What I do with my children is watch with them. If they're going to watch television, I watch with them, so I can point things out to them and say, couldn't a girl have done that? Or why do you think that group is made up of only boys? Or things like that, and encourage her to think outside the box. That's one thing that people can do.
Terrific. Thanks. I think that's probably especially important too for, as Martin has asked, for people living in rural or distant parts of their country, to have a positive role model, to be able to see in the media, either online or on screen, those kind of positive role models, and then be prepared to aspire to them. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Ahmed, what about you? What do you think personally people can do at an individual level to make a change here?
Well, in fact, let me just remind myself and the viewers that both levels are important. The policy level is important to allow individuals to act and to provide them with some safe environment and enabling environment for their initiatives to come. But in the meantime, we should not wait only the policies to change. There are some actions can be taken in the ground. I believe just last week I received in my office a 17 years old young man, I think Nick, you all know him, who the founder of Assembly, who sold it to Yahoo for $30 million. A 17 years old man who made this application and able now to become a superstar in information technology. And I think there are many stories for women that for young women that they can innovate and they can start with their free time to do something for their community. What I'm most concerned about, and this is my message always for young people, that you can always connect and try to link things from virtual to real, especially when it comes to community development. We are seeing so many parts of the world, little contribution from young people can really do some big changes in their community. The online and the social media, the ICT in general, provide them with a venue and with a space for them to interact and to get to know each other, and then to meet based on their interests and thematic issues as well. And my concern also about how we can allow for platforms, online platforms that link the virtual with real. This is a big concern for me. If we can keep the momentum always running, especially with the free time for young women and boys, I mean, spending only in a virtual life without linking it to action, we will be missing, or wasting this power and momentum. So more platforms are needed to link this to community development, and there are so many theories about how to do that and how to link the social or the virtual activism to community interventions and projects for serving the community. I don't want to waste the whole conversation talking about this transition, how we can do that, but maybe this is another discussion that we can have later. So this is a contribution from individuals. Another thing that I think what individuals can do also is also to try to look to the big picture while they are implementing some small things. It's important always to see what's happening around and to make sure that whatever you do at the national level or the community level will fit somewhere. And this is maybe lead me again to why policies are important. And I would like just to link with the talk about the post-2015 development agenda. And with the post-2015 development agenda, you know that the whole world is debating now what should be the goals for the world for 15 years to come. What should be the development contract that will guide our work and our development efforts for many years to come. I strongly see that the ICT is an enabler for any goal to happen. It's an enabler just to make sure that we are approaching a more progressive, a more empowering post-2015 development agenda, especially for young women. We cannot afford to talk about development anymore without looking to the demographic fact and to the gender situation and the women's right in many countries. I think we need to be more progressive. We need to take this step now and to champion for women's rights, not only in abstract, but also with using these tools and to make sure that they are empowered enough first to make living, to sustain their families, and also to do choices. What is empowerment at the end of the day? Empowerment for me that people, women and men realize that they have potentials and they are able to reach this potential.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things we've seen is that ICTs have enabled people, especially youth who understand it inherently, that they can exercise their human rights and their powers of empower themselves. Anybody else on the panel have any thoughts on what personally we could do?
Unmute
okay.
me.
Sure, Doreen, yeah, go ahead, and then I think Blair and maybe Stacy too. Go ahead, Doreen.
Okay, thanks, Gary. I mean, just a couple of quick points. I mean, back to what Geena was saying. I mean, I can totally relate. And you know, in my home, I have gender balance. I have 2 boys and I have 2 girls. And as they're growing up, I find it much more of a challenge to see what they're doing. It was okay when they were just watching TV, but now they have their mobile phones and they've just recently acquired their first laptop. So it gets pretty scary to watch what's going on, but we do try. I think one of the things that we can do, we governments, international organizations, NGOs, the private sector, we can try to do a better messaging about how technology, about the human side of technology, not just technology for technology. I mean, we need to show the impact of technology and the human side, because girls do have a tendency to want to get into careers where they feel like they're helping people. The other thing that I thought was interesting, I was at the event in Brussels that we did at the European Parliament, and the issue of doing the point about doing a prize. The ITU, we launched this Tech Needs Girls Prize, and it was felt by many people there, but that having a prize attached to something was appealing to girls. And our first prize was awarded this year, and we awarded 10 girls from Belgium, from the U.S., and from Nigeria, actually, and they all had super cool, innovative ideas on things like tracking diabetes to trying to improve traffic in Abuja. So it was really interesting. And I mean, the other thing in terms of getting young people, particularly in rural areas, interested, is the fact, as Blair was saying, is that there's this huge demand and the skills aren't there. So unemployment is skyrocketing amongst the youth. And if the youth and our young girls could understand that this is an area where you can get a job, and you can get a job and actually have an impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blair, you had some thoughts?
Well, I don't think we can underestimate how important our education system is in this work, and making sure that wherever we are getting really clear as to what is being offered to our students in elementary and middle school. There's so much focus on high school, and I believe you lose girls in science and math in particular, and I have an 11-year-old who I'm watching closely in the junior high level, 5th and 6th grade. And I just realized that one of the elective circles that she's able to participate in, they removed the science odyssey and replaced it with dance. So I'm asking questions as to why, and we can all do that. I'm sure there's great reasons, but if we don't have the exposure at that grade level, right, 3rd, 4th through 7th and 8th grade, right, then girls are not going to stay excited about math and science, and they're not going to understand the opportunities. So I think we all, wherever we live, rural or not, can play a huge role in the course offerings and that selection, and ask the questions and help get the exposure if it's a challenge to do.
Terrific. That brings to mind, I saw a story last night on the network news about a 17-year-old high school student, woman, young girl, who has invented a way to charge your cell phone in 20 seconds, which, you know, we'd all love, right? And I just thought, you know, Geena, we were talking about how, you know, the media, well, in this case, this is a girl who was encouraged through STEM to do this, but then the media picked up on it, and I wonder how many young women watched that last night and thought, hey, if they can do that, I can do that. So, you know, I can see where it all kind of ties together.
Right.
We're kind of running out of time, so I'd like to pose one more question from our viewers out there. This comes from Heidi, and Heidi says, is anything being done successfully in developing countries to teach men the importance of empowering girls and women through technology? Does anybody have any insights on that? Because we probably do have a few men viewing here.
I can speak a little bit about that, and I'm not going to speak at an education or institutional level. I'm going to speak on a day-to-day level. As I mentioned at Mashable, half of our workforce is men, and they're just as incredible as the women. And I think what we do here is we support each other in our careers and in our ideas and our creativity. And when you have that kind of environment where everyone has a voice, and you see that it creates the best product or the best article or the best event, you start to see that, you know, every voice does matter. You need both halves of the sky. And so I think we need to certainly encourage education systems, some of the things we talked about like STEM and making sure that there's special attention paid to science and mathematics and helping girls along the way. And then once we get past the university level, making sure that our cultures, whether that's, you know, in the NGOs, in the private sector, really foster that empowerment of all people, and so that it becomes collaborative, because it's a human issue, not just a girl issue. And so, you know, we've seen some real success here, and I think part of it is just supporting each other. It sounds simple, but it works.
Well, simple is often the best. Do you think are there any countries out there, and Geena, do you have any thoughts on that first? Any more thoughts on that one? But I'd like to also explore this question that came in, which I think is good. Which countries are kind of leading on this issue, and are there any examples out there that, in education specifically, that would help bring people to this?
Right. I did want to follow up on what Christy said, and you said a wonderful thing earlier that I had to write down, that the workforce needs to reflect the community. And so in order to get men involved, one important key is having the workforce reflect the community. If we want to elevate women in all of these areas, in all these tech areas, the workforce needs to be half women, and that will help involve the public if the workforce can reflect the population of the public. So I think it's really important for men to understand it starts not only with encouraging women to get into ITCs or supporting them, but actually working with them in their you know, whatever workforce they happen to be in, to include women, which will advance the progress of women tremendously.
Absolutely. And as you've noted, it probably comes down to education and making sure that people are aware that you know, it is an equal world and there are equal opportunities. But do you think, just as our final questions, are there any examples out there that we could cite and leave with our viewers of either countries that are leading on this issue or specific examples of educational programs that might encourage people to be more equitable, girls to be more willing to go into the field, and for others to emulate in being more equitable? Anyone out there?
Maybe I can say something here.
Sure.
About
go ahead.
The power of non-formal education as well. It's not only the formal education that you get, but also the non-formal education allow you to invest more in the values that you need as well for the civic values that we are talking about. I think it's all about civic values here. Education is not only about knowledge or skills, it's also about values. And the way we use information technology, and the way we hire, the way we work, the way we cooperate and we work with other colleagues, is all should be based on values of tolerance, acceptance, coexistence, and also believing genuinely that women should have full rights and full access to reach their true potential. For me, we all know what should be done. I think, but how to get there is still seems a big issue for all of us. We all realize that we are now, this planet took thousands of years to reach a place where we have a kind of norms, the global norms, reflected with peace, human rights, development, democracy. Believe me or not, but this planet has never had this much of consensus of these values. We have this. This is something to celebrate as a starting point. It took us thousands of years of wars and for the human being to reach this place. I'm now, I mean, talking to you from the United Nations, where an organization that reflects these values and the consensus that the nations reach, that we need to empower our people and to invest in human rights and equality for all the people. I think starting points, as Stacey said, education, but in the way from education and the transition to the labor force should be reconsidered, should be restudied in a way that promotions is based on merit, not based on gender.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Any final comments from anyone else on that question or others? Doreen? No?
Well, Gary, just to come back to your question before about like developing country examples.
Yep.
I mean, we can certainly look to to India. Like, who's doing well? India, Malaysia, China. It would be good to look at those countries and why are they succeeding in terms of getting more girls into STEM and then into the ICT workforce.
Okay. Anyone else want to add something on that? If not, I think that brings us towards the end of our discussion for today. Thank you all very much for taking the time to be with us and to talk about how we can empower young women through ICTs, and young men too, I think, and young boys. I hope that the many participants that we've had join us today and those that are going to hopefully watch this as it gets tweeted around the world will stay involved by exploring, some of the initiatives we've talked today, some of the potential. And again, we'll tell you can always look to the UN Economic and Social Council website because we're going to gather government ministers from around the world to debate the issue in Geneva, this very issue in Geneva, from the 1st to the 4th of July. So hopefully we'll make a little more noise and a little more progress at the time. So again, we'll happily put up all your websites, and again, thank you very much for your time and for your involvement in this very important issue.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Cheers all. Bye now.
Mute. Thank you, Gary. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm going to hit the end broadcast.